Hi guys, Ranger here, and welcome back to another reaction and review. And this is to the third episode of DuckTales, The Great Dime Chase. Now, judging by the episode title, I'm wondering if Magica is going to be in this episode. I don't know. So let's jump in and see what we have. See what this episode is about. Some people were surprised to see me start the series, and were also excited to see me continue it. So let's begin. Okay, the the minor stories of this episode. The minor story of this episode is first off. I want to mention the brief things before I talk about the larger things going on in this episode. Louis is a little on the lazy side here. He doesn't want to budge, and he makes a remark about his phone being just 3 months old, so it's time to get a new one. He says, we're rich. He kind of thought, okay, now I have a rich family, so I can buy whatever I want. And Scrooge tells him, you're not rich, I am. And honestly, Scrooge, the one thing that I have to say with Scrooge, and it's very much apparent, it's apparent here, it's apparent in the Disney comics, is Scrooge does know the concept of working hard and the effort of hard work. And if you've read the Disney comics, then you know that, especially the Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, which I have that comic, and it's an absolutely beautiful comic. All the stuff that Scrooge went through in his life, it was a very, very interesting read. All the stuff that he did from the moment he earned his first dime all the way up to the moment whenever the bin came into existence. I mean, there was just a lot of stuff that he went through. He wasn't even able to be there whenever his mom passed away. He wasn't even able to be there. And so there was a lot of stuff that he had to endure in his life. And Scrooge wants his nephew to appreciate hard work and be shown. He wants to show him how much that hard work can mean and pay off whenever you do it. And the interesting thing here is that Scrooge kept supposedly his number one dime in this display case. Now, this was apparent in the original DuckTales series. He kept his number one dime in the display case. And I keep thinking, and even in the comics, and I keep thinking that there was even a comic where the dime did go missing, and since he considered it his lucky dime, actually, yes, there was. There was a comic. I think it was in Donald Duck Adventures. I think it was by Gemstone. It was the small take-along comics. Or not the small take-along comics, but there was a comic where Donald accidentally swallowed the number one dime, and as a result, things started happening with Scrooge's fortune. Things started going wrong with the companies and businesses and other things that he owned, and so he started suffering a major financial loss, and he was so comic hit played on the concept that Scrooge's dime was in fact lucky. However, in this right here, it's not that the dime is really lucky, at least it doesn't appear so in this episode, but just that the dime is special to him because it's the first dime that he ever owned. It's the first dime that he ever earned. And it brings back memories to him. It takes him back to whenever he was just a shoe shiner in Glasgow, and how far it's like a testimony of sorts to how far that he's managed to come since then. And it's a representation of both how hard that he's worked over the years to get to where he is. And some have made the references in, I think, comics about Scrooge's fortune. Scrooge has said before he earned his fortune, and yes, he did. He did in fact earn his fortune. He worked hard, like all of his time in the Yukon. whenever gold was booming, and so I believe it was the Yukon. And so it's an interesting thing here that he doesn't even keep the number one dime in this display case, but he actually keeps it on him this time, wearing it around his neck. And I think that's actually really cool that he uses a decoy dime here. And I think it's cool that he understands that there are crazy people that work for him, and so he'd rather keep the dime with him. I understand that, and I think that's really cool. But it's interesting that Louis gets his own dime here after all of what Louis went through. Sorry, Louis. After all of what Louis went through in this, he, I think, actually did have an appreciation for the dime, for what he had to go through, everything that he went through in this to get it. And so I think he did have an appreciation for it. However, due to his forgetfulness, he accidentally put it in a soda machine. So, yeah, he's probably going to try to have to get that back now, and maybe have an even greater appreciation for it. Now, there's a smaller story going on throughout the rest of the episode where Scrooge is conversing with the board members throughout the majority of the episode. They want to discuss his spending of money that he spends at the bin, and even contemplates the concept of shutting down the bin at one point, which would put a few of the people that work for Scrooge out of business. However, Scrooge elaborates at the end, which is absolutely hilarious, that everybody that works for him is basically bat-crap insane, and so if they fire them, that they will come for revenge, so it's best to keep them in a controlled, contained environment. And so the board members decide they don't want anyone running loose. So, yeah, very smart move on their part, which is hilarious. But the biggest story that we see going on here in the episode is the reveal of Della. And the reveal of Della... Now, there's a couple little other background things here. We see the doll of the original Webby with a arrow through the chest, which is hilarious. I don't know if that's them poking fun at the original DuckTales series, because that's how Webby was like originally dressed. I don't know if that's them poking fun at the original series or what. But it's very interesting. The moment that Dewey made the remark that he wanted to learn about, that he wanted information, and Webby began to go on about, even as far as secrets about Scrooge McDuck that could drastically change the world. I knew that whenever he remarked about his mother, that was going to hit a sensitive chord. And sure enough, whenever he made the remark about her, Webby's expression changed. He revealed that he managed to find one picture, and here we see a picture of Della pushing Donald into a birthday cake, and she's like having an absolute blast here. And Webby reveals that she doesn't really have any information on Della, and that and she also reveals throughout the rest of the episode that, she also reveals that someone else, that weird things happen to those who inquire about Della. Now, this is a very interesting thing because, and first I'm going to go over some of it. Now, the librarian here, I could be wrong, but there's a part of me that thinks that maybe she's actually Della in disguise, working for Scrooge the entire time. Maybe he doesn't even know it, or maybe he does know it, and he's trying to keep her concealed. I'm not really sure. One little nifty thing that we do see the introduction of course, is the introduction of Gyro Gearloose and Little Bulb, which is really cool because this Little Bulb was a part of the original series, so it's very interesting to see it come back here. And yeah, Gyro is definitely different here than he was in the original DuckTales. However, honestly, it doesn't bother me at all because this is a different series, and so if they had made Gyro exactly the same as he was in the original series, then it would feel more like kind of like copy and paste of sorts. And so, considering they changed some of the personalities of the other characters, Huey, Dewey, and Louie in the show, and Webby and and Mrs. Beakley, I think it makes sense to change Gyros as well, you know, because it would just kind of more fit. But I honestly can say I do like his personality here. I think it is interesting. And I can't help but wonder, dude, the ending itself with him is interesting because it's kind of dark. He makes the mention that he is robot. So I can't help, and then we see a name, Project Blatherskite. So there's a part of me that thinks, is this foreshadowing that there's actually going to be? This makes me wonder: is this foreshadowing that there's actually that Gyro is going to be a bad guy at the end of the series? I don't know. Could he be in a bit too deep over his head and actually think that he's a robot, but he's actually not? I don't know if what's going to happen with that, but it is an interesting concept. But I also love the references to, you know, going back to the original art of Scrooge earning his first dime, and him telling of the story of him coming to America and everything. This was a really good scene for me, particularly because I read through the entirety of The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, and also made the reference about this dude, about this guy here, this janitor, kind of being like, or this guy, kind of, he reminded me of DJ Palm 3 in MLP, and yeah, this guy's probably like the Palm 3 of this universe. However, the dancing, I gotta say, that he does, yeah, I do that whenever I'm alone. I also really like the reference here that Louis made about, he's trying to look up a video, obviously on YouTube, on how to pick a lock, and he said, no, not another ad. This is funny because this is like YouTube, using YouTube on like the regular mobile, the ads. And then, yeah, there's lots of do-it-yourself videos on YouTube that you can try to find to do something, but they're not all relevant. Because sometimes they will you don't have something that the video tells you that you need. Or you need the video to try to tell you how to get what is in the video. The biggest thing that we see in this episode was the reference towards Della. They find out there's a secret control panel in the wall, which is only controlled and activated by Duck family DNA. And it pricks Dewey and allowing them access into the secret chamber. Okay, I gotta say, I won't deny, this right here makes me think of Kingdom Hearts, because this makes me think about in The End of the World, the segment, the hallways that you traverse right before you get to the end of the world, I mean right before you get to Final Rest. This makes me think of the second hallway, or sorry, the first hallway, where it shows a world being covered in darkness. The world is like falling apart and everything. This makes me think of that. But we see this chamber, which shows possibly different artifacts and such that Della herself may have collected, and we see different things pertaining to her locked away in this chamber. They wonder why, and they also discover not just a picture of Della, which is hanging here, which shows that she was an adventurer, and we see her on an old plane, like she's standing on the wing of an old airplane. And there's also a note framed from her. Scrooge, I have taken the spear of Celine, I'm sorry, Della. And Webby first makes the mention that they should probably tell the others about what they find, but Dewey suggests that they don't tell anyone until they know further information. Now, honestly, this is a very interesting setup. This is a very interesting setup because out of all three of the brothers, Dewey is the one right now that is the most concentrated on finding their mother. And I think it's an interesting setup that, you know, right now, and I have a feeling that this is going to come into play later on, in more ways than one. I speculate that right now Dewey and Webby are both keeping the secret from Huey and Louie, and I suspect that later on, Huey and Louie are probably going to get upset at Dewey because he's keeping a secret, and probably going to get upset at him because he's kept the secret from them for so long about their mother. They're going to get upset, I suspect, and wonder why he's kept it a secret from them. Uh, and then he's going to reveal that he didn't want to say anything until he knew for certain, which is understandable because you don't want to jump to conclusions. And right now, Dewey, honestly, in this episode, definitely seems to be the most mature and like intellectual of the brothers. It appears here, and kind of most. Yeah, he's humorous. Yeah, but there's also a rational side to him, and so it is understandable that he's the one that is kind of focusing on this. But there's a setup about Webby asks, "Did Della betray Scrooge?" And I think that that's obviously the plan. That's what the writing is telling, is leaving you to believe, is that she betrayed him. However, I really want to believe that she didn't, and that there's a reason behind it. Now, this is a theory. Now, obviously, I don't know anything else about this series. I've just watched. This is the third episode so far. Others may already know the answer, so please avoid spoilers if possible. But this is just a theory on my behalf. Is that she took it not because of greed or anything, but because the rest of her family was in danger. There's a possibility that the sword of Selene may have had a curse on it, or there were others that were looking after it, and they may have threatened Della's family, Donald and her kids. And so she took the sword and left to protect them, and she has tried to stay hidden all this time to protect them. That's a theory. That is a theory. That's why I thought maybe. Now, the question is, why did Scrooge have all this stuff locked away? There's a possibility, again, one could speculate that Scrooge locked all this stuff away because it was a bad memory to him. Now, there's a theory on my behalf that Scrooge doesn't know that she took it to try to protect everyone. And she didn't want to tell anyone, so she made herself look like the bad guy to try to protect others, make it look like she betrayed Scrooge, but in reality she didn't. But she took everything, and even Scrooge believes that she betrayed him. And this is here locked away both as a memory it's a memory to her, and it's also like a reminder to Scrooge about her betrayal. That's a theory. There's a possibility that he also locked this stuff away so that maybe later on he could reveal to his nephews if the time ever come up. If something ever came up, he would be able to tell them. But this is now another theory that I have is that Scrooge locked all this stuff away altogether to keep other people and prying eyes from delving into Della. And that the reason why the mailman disappeared was because Scrooge thought maybe he was working with someone who was trying to track Della down because now she has a bounty on her head, possibly. And that actually goes together with what I said. If we go back to the librarian, and this makes me think that the librarian isn't really the librarian. And that this was my thought. The librarian is actually Della. And Scrooge knows it. And so he's been hiding her out here the entire time. She changed her name, and that's why she possibly now lives at this library. She lives here now. Because whenever Dewey makes the remark, who's going to try to stop me? And she says, me. And she pulls out this sword just out of nowhere. What if this sword is the sword of Selene that she has? This is a theory, but it would kind of coincide with what we've seen so far. This is just mere conjecture, but it does kind of make sense. And again, like I said, there's nothing conclusive about that, but it is a theory that I maintain. And I'm probably going to be proven wrong, but I'll just have to wait and see what transpires later on. But like I said, it kind of would make sense that... So, and it's very interesting because Della has never really been seen, hardly, in traditional Disney media. Della has been sort of a mystery in the Disney Duck fandom. Sorry, in pretty much the Disney fandom. There are a few characters that has sort of remained a mystery in the Disney fandom, such as Goofy's wife and Max's mom. She's kind of been absent. They've never made any reference to her that I recall. The only glimpses that we got of her was in the original Goofy cartoons from the 1940s. But we never had any more modern references to her. But there was also, of course, Della. What happened to them? Now, in the very first Donald cartoon, Donald gets a letter from his sister asking about watching the boys, I believe. And that was the very first time that we heard anything about her, but we never we never saw her. And I think right now it's been a very long-standing mystery. What happened? What happened to them? What happened to Della? And what happened to their dad? So I think it's interesting that Disney has decided, that the writers have decided to bring back that concept. And it's similar in a way to how they brought back Oswald. Oswald was absent from anything Disney because Disney didn't have the rights to him anymore until the mid-2000s, whenever Disney reacquired the rights to Oswald. And so to bring him back, they did Epic Mickey, which to me was a very great game. And they haven't brought him back in traditional Disney media yet. They brought him back in a couple of the Mickey shorts as gags, but they never actually have actually seen him. We haven't actually heard him speak or anything as of yet. He did get a comic dedicated to himself in Walt Disney Comics and Stories, I think it was. But I think it's interesting that they're bringing this back, and there's a very interesting story set up with what is going on with Della. And it's playing on the concept of her being an adventurer, not just a mother, but she was an adventurer as well. Now, there's also kind of a darker concept that I could theorize, is that maybe she went into hiding because she might have actually found out that she was pregnant. And so she was concerned for her kid's life, and she found out she was having triplets, and so she ended up after she gave birth to the sons, there was a possibility that she after that may have actually went into hiding. There doesn't appear, we haven't seen yet any pictures of Della with her sons at any point during their lives, so we don't really know what exactly was going on. Now, if we go by the original Disney comics and the original Disney cartoon, now I don't know yet if this new DuckTales series is actually using the original Donald cartoon from the 1930s as canon for the story. If it does, then that shows that at that point Della was raising Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but then at some point she went missing. But according to this right here, Dewey said that Donald said that she just went missing. So there's definitely a lot going on with the story, and I'm very intrigued about what they're going to do and how they're going to reveal Della. Now, like I said, she may not be the librarian whatsoever. The librarian may just be very cool and a complete bad A. But I'm very curious about what is going to happen. Now, like I said, I really don't think whatsoever that Della is going to be bad. My theory, and I'm probably going to be proven wrong, but my theory is that she did take the sword, but the reason she did it was to try to lure people away from those that she cared about. She decided to make them think that she turned her back on them, but it was simply to protect them. She did it out of love. And if that's the case, it's really admirable that she did that. But that's a theory that I hold, and I'll probably hold that theory until more information surfaces. But I got to say, I really enjoyed this episode. It's very interesting setup. Scrooge at one kind of is trying to harden Louis a bit and make him realize the concept of good, honest, hard work. But we also see more transition in the story of what is going on with Della. And like I said, this is similar to Gravity Falls in that every episode it continues from the other, but there's a major underlying mystery going on, a discovery to be made. And this is similar to Gravity Falls in that in Gravity Falls, you had the mystery of the falls itself. You had the mystery of the journals, who wrote the journals, and the secret underground chamber that Grunkle Stan had. And so, even though random stuff happened throughout the episode, some of it in connection with what was going on throughout Gravity Falls, which we learn later on, still, more information surfaced in different episodes about what was going on throughout Gravity Falls, leading up to the major reveal of Stan having a brother, Ford, and so finding out about Bill Cipher. And so there's more going on in this episode here. There's stories that happen throughout the episode that are played on the surface, but there's the background story, which is the deeper story, which appears that in the background, which sets you up for the big mystery. And I really love what they're doing with this series. I have to say, I really love what they're doing with this series, and I'm very intrigued with the story, and I'm very interested myself, because I would love to find out about Della, because as a Disney fan, that's kind of been a question that I've had myself for a long time, and so I'm very curious to see to see what happens later on. So again, Disney, I gotta say, to the people that brought back the series and the writers for this episode, Disney, thank you everybody for working on this episode. Thank you everybody for this new DuckTales series, and I'm very curious. It's turning out to be a really great series. Thankfully, there are a lot of people that love it, so thank you all, and I'm really curious to what's going to happen in the next episode and the rest of the series. So thank you all again so much, and also to everybody that watched up to this point. Thank you guys again for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next video that I do. Take care.